From Washington, D.C. to the heart of America, welcome to Mark Alford's America. I'm freshman Congressman Mark Alford from Missouri, and I believe in America. I believe in you, and most importantly, I believe that our greatest days are still ahead. You know, each week we take you behind the scenes to share the stories, the news, the legislation, and to meet the great folks who I have the honor of working with, helping shape our nation. Today we're talking to my friend, Secretary of our House Republican Conference, and Congresswoman from Michigan's 9th District, Lisa McClain. Right now, Lisa serves on the House Oversight Committee, Education and Workforce, the House Budget Committee, and she is a colleague of mine on the House Armed Services Committee. We just got back from Taiwan, where we were on the ground up close and personal, seeing the country, meeting its leaders, the president, vice president. We'll be talking about that and the threat from communist China. Please welcome Congressman Lisa McClain. Good to be in your office, Lisa.
Good to have you here. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
Good.
I was just watching you on C-SPAN on labor and workforce. You were interviewing the acting Secretary of Labor, and you kept asking her, have you ever owned a business? What did she say?
I don't know. She couldn't answer the question, which is really quite concerning. It wasn't a trick question.
Right.
She is the acting labor secretary. One, I would think you'd be able to answer a very simple question. And the question was, have you ever owned a business? I mean, that's pretty simple. Literally, I probably asked that question 5 times and she couldn't answer it. Now, her response would be, well, just pay me more money. I probably can answer it. Obviously, I'm being sarcastic. But I think what we have to understand is these are people who are in charge. These are people who are making policy for America, and they can't answer a simple question. That should be gravely concerning to a lot of people.
Well, I ran across this on the Small Business Committee, too, because we have people who are running the Small Business Administration who've never owned a business in their life and have no idea, as you do, having been a former business owner, what it takes to sign the front of a paycheck and not just the back of one.
Yeah, I don't understand where this assault on business, especially the assault on small business, comes into play. I mean, think about it. America, it was built on small business, on capitalism, on the ability to come to a free capitalistic society to be able to choose, where do you want to work, who do you want to work for, or maybe I want to be an entrepreneur and work for myself. This assault on business is just unbelievable. And what I think people don't understand is it's business and it's our economic systems that give us our social programs. It's the businesses that pay taxes. It's the businesses that employ people who pay taxes, right? So the healthier our economic systems are, the healthier our social programs can be. Why is the assault on small business? If businesses cease to exist or are run by the government, I think we lose the basis of capitalism. But if businesses cease to exist and go out of business, take their ball and go home, so to speak, who pays that tax bill? The government produces nothing.
I think, and this sounds like a conspiracy theory almost, but I think that is the idea behind the progressive, woke, broke, liberal sect of our nation, that they don't want you to own anything. They're moving us towards a renter nation. They don't want capitalism necessarily, small businesses to exist, because if you are out on your own and building your own fortune in America, then that's not right. Everyone should own or should be on the same level playing field in America. It's communism, basically.
It's 100% communism, which is really ironic from the party of choice and the party of diversity. Well, what about diversity of businesses? Why can't we have an independent contractor? Why can't we have a W-2? Why does everything have to be one size fits all? Doesn't need to be. I think you're onto something. It's this creation of dependency, right? I tell my children, I don't want them to be dependent. I don't want them to be dependent on me. Right? That's why I send them to college or trade school and go out and get a job, right? Start your own life. I don't want them to be dependent on their spouse. And I, for doggone sure, don't want them to be dependent on the government.
But yet a lot of people are. And we're seeing the kind of a society where kids are growing up, where there's this expectation that the government's going to provide them, pay off their college debts, when we know that debt is not being really paid off. It's being transferred to people in America who did not incur college debt, and now they're sharing that debt with others.
Right. You bring up a very good point. They want to pay off the college debt, or if I listen to the Biden administration, they want to forgive the debt.
Yeah.
Okay, well, does that mean that the college professors are going to teach for free? No, I don't think that's the case, because we got to make sure that they get a pay raise, right? It's backwards, right? At the end of the day, the government doesn't produce anything. The government has very little streams of revenue. The only stream of revenue they truly have is taxes, and who pays the taxes? Hardworking Americans.
And yet they want to grow the government even more bloated than it is now. We see that in the president's budget. Let's talk about what's going on the college campuses, since we kind of touched on that tangentially. The unrest right now, the Jew-hating, Hamas-loving, they're not protesters, they're rioters. They are criminals who are breaking the law now on college campuses. Did you ever think you would see something like this in your lifetime?
Not in America. I would expect to see this in Venezuela, in Cuba, but not in America. I never thought I would see this in America. But this is what happens when you don't have rule of law, is you have anarchy. And what I would want everyone to reflect on, and I've done some reflecting on this, these riots on college campuses are a reflection of the college themselves. Those are the end result, or the production of what they earn and what they learn in college. The college campuses are educating them, and this is what the college campuses are producing. So they need to take some ownership on it, and they need to go by the rule of law.
Well, there's also outside influences. We know, when you get tents that all look the same that are out and these encampments, when you have people wearing the Palestinian headgear and the scarves that all match, when you have older people coming onto college campuses that aren't students there, this is coming from somewhere. George Soros, Antifa, other outside forces that are trying to divide our nation, create anarchy within, and crumble us as a nation.
I would agree, but I still push back on the college's responsibility is to make sure that they uphold their laws and protect the safety of all students. So if you're going to be in charge and it's your college campus, you have to enforce the rules. I agree with you, but we have a lack of courage. We're scared. We don't want to deal with it. Or I should rephrase, some of us don't want to deal with it. I know you and I are fighting against that, and we fight against that every day.
What about stripping away federal funds from colleges that don't protect Jewish students?
I am 100% in favor of that. It's clear. When you chant death to America, that is an assault on not just Jewish students, but really all students. And at some point in time, we need to start giving these people their world instead of enabling them and providing a platform for them to have this hatred speech, right? I'm all for free speech. We got to be very careful about free speech. But when free speech crosses the line to criminal acts, to violence, to disruption, then we must enforce the law.
Have these types of protests or riots been against gays or minorities, any protected class, it wouldn't have lasted 10 seconds.
Well, I often ask this. If this was a white supremacist group, do you think they'd be treated the same way?
Yeah, there's no way. Where do you see this ending? I mean, are we going to have another summer of love like we had 4 years ago?
Well, I think if we don't get control over it, not the college campuses, if we don't get control over those college campuses, I think it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse, because it's like your child. If you have a curfew that says 11:30 is your curfew and your child comes home at 12 and they have no ramifications, no consequences, they don't come home at 11 for their 11:30 curfew. They come home at 12:30.
That's why, I think the kids now have grown up in a timeout generation. I grew up in the wooden spoon generation, and some people don't like that, but...
all my mom had to do was give me that look, and I knew I was in trouble.
Hey, we're having a fascinating conversation with Lisa McClain, Congresswoman from Michigan. Hey, when we come back, we're going to talk about our recent trip to Taiwan, meeting the president, the incoming president, and the threat from communist China and a bully named Xi Jinping. Some interesting things we want to tell you about that happened on that trip. You're listening to Mark Alford's America. We'll be back after this. Welcome back to Mark Alford's America, where we give you a behind-the-scenes look at Washington and let you meet some of the folks I'm working with to help shape our great nation. Today, we're talking with Congresswoman Lisa McClain of Michigan. You're from the Lake Huron area, right? Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about your district.
Well, my district is the 9th district. I'm a little biased. I think it's the best district in Michigan. But it's, everyone uses your hand, the mitten. I have the thumb area, which is surrounded by the lakes. And then I have northern Oakland, northern Macomb. So my district goes in a little bit of an L shape.
I've never been up there.
You got to come visit. It's beautiful. Yeah. Summertime in Michigan is the best.
You were kind enough to invite me on a congressional delegation trip, or what we call a MICA trip, to an educational trip, basically, to Taiwan. We were there with Dan Kildee, who's also from Michigan. He's a Democrat. So the three of us, and we really learned a lot. What was your biggest takeaway from Taiwan?
I think my biggest takeaway was the sobering nature of it. And what I mean by that is we talk about the threat from communist China. It's another thing to be on the ground in Taiwan and to be that close to be in harm's way. The threat that the Taiwanese people live with day in and day out, you can sense it, you can feel it. And in the meetings that we had, to me, was very sobering on our responsibility as America. We may have our internal arguments and our internal disagreements, but I will share with you, whether it's Taiwan or any other nation that I've seen, they rely on America's leadership. They look to us to do the right thing. They look to us for protection, to deal with the bullies, to be strong leaders and provide hope, not for America, but for the world. That, to me, was really sobering. And right now, I think we have a little bit of a gap, a little bit of a void, a little bit of a vacuum with our weak leadership with this Biden administration. They are begging for us to be strong.
Well, at the same time, we were there meeting with the President Tsai and the Vice President Lai, who's going to be president in May. Anthony Blinken, our Secretary of State, is over, in China. China is only, 74 miles from Taiwan across the strait. He's over there playing footsie with Xi Jinping, I know. Kissing up to him and their policy of appeasement. The world is on fire, and Joe Biden's got a squirt gun policy for foreign affairs. Didn't you find that interesting, the difference there between our two trips?
My mom always told me, you are who you hang with. And if you look at this administration and who they hang with, they're pandering to the progressives. Listen, China doesn't respect diplomacy. China's coming after us and the world educationally, economically, and militarily. We have got to be a leader, and we have got to stand with our allies. People need to know who America stands with. And whether it's the botched withdrawal from Afghanistan and leaving everyone, stranded, Americans stranded, and people who have helped us in Afghanistan, to what's happening in Israel right now, it's no wonder Taiwan looks at us and says, are you going to leave me next? I mean, this administration has really botched its foreign policy.
For folks who don't know really the technical aspects of our relationship with Taiwan, We don't officially recognize Taiwan as an independent nation. We're still under the One China policy set forth by the United Nations. We are commemorating the 45th anniversary of the Taiwan Relations Act, which says basically that we will help Taiwan in its capacity to defend itself should something happen, should China invade. And also we have to maintain our own capacity to help against the coercion, both economically and socially. And we found out, we heard directly from those in power there, that Xi Jinping is doing exactly that, trying to isolate Taiwan economically and socially. We met with the Chamber of Commerce there, the AmCham, and I thought what they said about the level that it's gotten to now of Xi Jinping just trying to isolate Taiwan, that was very disturbing.
It was extremely disturbing, and sadly, that strategy is working because we're allowing it to work. We're no different than the hearing that I was just in. We play this middle-of-the-road policy. We give middle-of-the-road answers. We try to play both sides. You see it with President Biden doing it right now with what's going on in Israel, not to mention what's going on with Jewish students and Palestinians. He can't take a side. The worst place in the world is to be in the middle of the road, and that's exactly what this administration is doing. And when you try and play both sides, one, it doesn't work, but two, it enables your enemies, it enables your adversaries to say, hey, no, I stand with this person. It's really clear.
I think this all goes back, this whole disaster of foreign policy and how we're now looked at on the world stage goes back to the way Biden pulled our troops out of Afghanistan, left 13 service members there to die, and then when their bodies come home, he's checking his watch. Just thoroughly disgusting way to do. I know President Trump had plans to get out of Afghanistan, but to do it the way that Biden did it, a date certain to try to match somewhere around 9/11, it did so much damage to our nation.
Yeah, we're playing checkers. The Biden administration is playing checkers, and the rest of the world is playing chess. I mean, the last thing that you do is you should never show your hand to your opponent, and that's what Biden does. And it's unfortunately it harms us, but like I said earlier, it makes us look weak on the world stage. And I will share with you, I believe a lot of these nations look at us as the last bastion of hope. We need to be strong in our convictions and stand with the people who are like-minded with us, not try and placate to our enemies.
Part of that is looking strong in our body as the House of Representatives and in our conference, of which you are the secretary. There's a lot of frustration, I think, with people back home in the Kansas City area, in the 4th Congressional District, and in Missouri, who don't really understand the dysfunction within our conference.
Well, quite frankly, I don't understand some of the dysfunction within our conference either. But I'm trying to put a positive spin on it. But the reality is this: it is dysfunctional. I mean, and anybody who says differently isn't truly being honest. Now, we can say, oh, democracy is ugly and it's messy and all that, and it's true. But what I will say is, let's not forget when we were under Pelosi's reign. Mm-hmm. She ran it as a dictator from the top up. No amendments, no committee hearings. She wrote the policy. She told you what the policy was going to do, what amendments. I mean, it was her way, period, end of conversation. And we complained about that. Quite frankly, both sides complained about it. Now we have the opposite, where we have an open rule process. We have amendment. Every state, right, we have a representative government. Every district has the opportunity to be represented. That's not as clean and pretty in a nice, pretty box. That doesn't mean to say that we can't do better. We can do better, but it shows you just the different extremes.
What do you make of this recent motion to vacate by Marjorie Taylor Greene?
I think it's a mistake. I think it's 100% a mistake.
It's the last thing we need right now.
Well, I don't know how that helps us move forward. we need to start on the appropriations. We need to start on NDAA again. We need to go forward and with conservative policies that we were all elected to do for our districts, like you're doing and like I'm doing. This does nothing positive to move the conference forward.
Lisa, thank you so much. Enjoy being with you here in the Cannon office building. Hey, thanks for joining us for Mark Alford's America. We'll talk again next week. Until then, remember, I believe in you. I believe that our best days are still ahead of us. And Lisa McClain, I believe in America.